I think the reason why Eddie was so receptive to me reaching out was because it's not like I'm asking for a handout. It's because I've already proven myself, and he's watched me kind of go through these stages of, oh, I've got 40 releases in 1 year, to, oh, now I have 12 releases in a year, but I'm on major labels. And then also too, like, social media has a lot to play. I mean, I hate to say this, but if you act crazy on social media, you're probably crazy, because there isn't a filter, and other people are going to pay attention to that, especially if you're shopping your music and then the next day you're like, let's say you're shopping your music to Atlantic Records, and then next day you have a meltdown on social media because it's snowing. Like, you, I think people don't understand how much you're viewed as an artist, and if you're going to do it as an artist, you need to be you need to be conscious about what people are reading and what you're saying, and what you're writing. And having an opinion is great, but I think if you say the wrong things and you're acting, like a like not professionally, you're not going to get treated like a professional.
So do you feel like your social media presence, that Eddie or others have seen that and felt like they could trust you and work with you because of how you behave there publicly?
Um, I think it's important. I would say yes, because like if you're on any of my social media pages, if I don't have anything going on, even if I do have something going on, I'm still going to probably post the same pictures of the studio, or like something of, like maybe an older release I had come out, or something that I'm working on, or um,
I mean, I follow you. You post new projects all the time, or just even little updates about what you're working on and things like that. And I have a whole series of videos that I advise about marketing and social media presence and planning that out. And sort of just being consistent is kind of the main point of that and I think that's what you're mirroring right now, in terms of kind of the emotion or the approach that you're taking, and that's a good point, because you can think of it of consistency in terms of just posting consistently, like let's post a few times a week at least or whatever, but also in terms of image consistency too, like,
right.
and sometimes we don't we don't think about that. It's like, or sometimes artists may feel that they're expected to be like kind of crazy and emotional, or other people, oh, they're just an artist and they're like that. But that's a good point that you make in terms of professionalism, because even so, you still have to be able to kind of put that in a box, which is really weird to say. It's really weird to say, because you want to have that creativity sort of just flowing and being what it is. But social media has become this professional outlet, like almost it's part of your resume now,
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. So what else are you working on? So you worked with a couple of great things with Eddie. I'm excited to hear all of that, even more in my playlist. I
Nice.
think you're working on something brand new, right? That you were playing for me before we came on. Do you want to share
Yeah.
a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Yeah, so I work with a couple other artists here in Denver locally. Like we pretty much just lock ourselves in the studio and we just nerd out and work on different compression, different anything new. We'll sit there and just beat it up until our ears can't take it anymore. But
Mm.
I've been working on so I have a new release. I have like, not a new release. I have 3 new tracks that I'm shopping, and one of them is a collab project with an artist here in Denver, and his name is Vedic, and his real name is Giselle Quintella, and his artist name is Vedic. But we've been working together for probably, gosh, I mean, we've been friends for probably 8-10 years, and then we've been working on projects here, and then we've had probably about 6 releases previously, because he does mastering and engineering for other artists. So he's kind of like the he's what we kind of kid around and joke with him, but we call him the Michael Phelps of music production, because he's probably the best engineer and producer I've ever worked with. So we just call him Phelps, and because no one's going to beat Michael Phelps. Like, no one's going to get 24 gold medals. No one. He's the best. Like, you can't touch Phelps. So that's kind of I'm doing a new track with him. I'll share you a little bit of it. It's called Unter, and he came up with the name, but we've been working on it. But I'll play you a little bit of it here. So hopefully you can hear that.
You got it going now. Sound is cutting in and out a little bit, but I want to know if maybe you can send that to me when it's done, because it does sound good. It's kind of coming weird through the video a little bit.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably because I'm using my earbuds.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, maybe we can, or maybe we can link some other songs that are released that people can hear
Sure.
below, so that we can give them a little flavor for what you're doing.
Sure.
So what else should we talk about? I really want a couple questions that are coming up as you're talking about some of the current projects. Maybe we can get into a little bit more of the music business concepts that people might be curious about and how they work into the real world and things. Before we jump into that, though, I want to see if you can give us like a little bit of more of the ancient history of your career and tell us how you got started in all of this. I mean, I work with a lot of people who are maybe even still in high school or considering what they're going to do. Maybe they're in their early 20s and they've gotten started a little bit DJing around town or creating their own productions. And people who are kind of exploring right now at that stage of life. And I'm curious what that stage of life was like for you, because I believe you've been in music since then, since that age, and even before that, right?
Right. So, I mean, that's
like what got this started for you, Ben?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think when I really decided that I wanted to start messing around with music was, gosh, it was probably back during the breakdancing days. And I was this little kid, and all these kids were like breakdancing, and it was like a new fad. And I remember this movie that came out, and it was by Harry Belafonte, and it's called Beat Street. And that movie, probably when I watched it, I was just like, man, this, because there was a DJ in there, and there was this guy, and his name was Double K, and he was the DJ that played at all these underground house parties in New York. And I was like, man, I want to be that guy. Like, that's already me. I'm already walking around with a recorder, a tape recorder and a microphone, recording different sounds, trying to put these sounds together to make something happen. So at that point, I just kind of decided like that's what I wanted to do. And I was a kid, but I still went through like the stages. I played sports, of course, and went to college and on a scholarship. But I started playing at a nightclub, and I was playing R&B and disco and like top 40 music. And I was probably about 16 years old. And it was down in Cherry Creek at this club called Butterfield 8 off of First and Fillmore, which is no longer there. And a gentleman, I had to make a demo for him, and these are tapes. So I had to record like my DJing session or like a demo and give it to the nightclub owner. And I got passed on about 5 times. And then one day he just called me up because one of his DJs couldn't make it. And he's like, hey, can you come down and play on a Friday night? And I was like, yeah. So I would go down and take my records. I would actually have to have My mom dropped me off because I didn't drive. Uh, I spent all my money on records that I didn't really have a car. So um, so I would play. That's how I started Butterfield 8, and then from there I started playing disco. Like they used to do disco nights here in Denver. I played at the I-Beam, and then I played at and there were certain owners of certain clubs that would hire you. But I've played every club in Denver I've played at. Still to this day, I've played at every club. I was a resident.
Up, you're just like, what's up? Sending over links, like, hire me.
Yeah, well, it was really strange. It was a very interesting time in music because, you know, everyone resorted to what was going to happen or who's playing in the Westward, and that's the Denver Westward. Is still very popular for music venues and showing who's coming out in the lineups. This is before this is like around. I mean, this is before like MySpace was there. This is before Facebook, any of this, any social media. So how you would get to play at these clubs was your reputation and your nights that you build. So if you're not a headliner, you would have to start out playing like a Wednesday night or Tuesday night. And I played Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like for 10 years straight. And I've played I played at like every club imaginable. I would play
All different genres on all those days. Or did you
well,
start getting into, like, when did this switch over from, R&B and disco and stuff into, your house, your tech house that you are into now?
I think that's so I was like when I played at I-Beam, it was like disco. So we played real disco records that were not time sensitive. So they were so what's different. So when you have I guess the easiest way to explain it is those disco records were never digitally reproduced, so they're not in real time. So that's a real drummer, and the drummer is not going to be on perfect timing.
Yeah.
So when you go to mix a record on this turntable to that turntable, it's going to be even more difficult because they're not in real time. You
Yeah.
just can't. You just can't sit there and hit sync. There was no sync button.
Yeah. Which kids these days, they may not understand that there's not Serato and all of that. You're actually lugging vinyl around. You
Yeah.
have to have that rhythm. So tell us, even like on the technical side of DJing, how did you know how to do that? How did you beat match in that kind of a situation?
So I started when I first started. Of course, I was using my hand on the vinyl and on the middle of the vinyl and speeding it up and trying to slow it down by holding the knob on the Techniques. And then I came across a gentleman that was the head DJ at the I-Beam and Rock Island. His name was Tabor Chapman. And Tabor told me, he goes, "Listen, Ben, if you're ever going to play with me, I don't ever want to see you touch a record. Your hand can never touch a record. You have to learn how to ride the pitch control." So, and the pitch control. So if you cue up a record and you're on for the first 4 beats, you have to sit there and ride the pitch control and make sure that it's on time, because it's never going to be synced unless you ride the pitch control.
So you mean
So
adjusting it in real time with the pitch control?
yeah, while
Isn't
you're
that
mixing.
scary? Isn't that like, what if you go too far and it's like, it's too
Yeah, I mean
fast
it's
or something?
yeah, I mean you could, yeah, that's why the
Whole dance
expression,
crashes.
yeah, that's where the train wreck the train wreck term came from, because if it's off, it goes way off and it'll veer. And normally you can keep it in, and it's not easy. It's kind of like a lost trade. But when you see a lot of older DJs doing all vinyl sets, that's what they're doing. They're really making sure the beats are on the right grid. And to me, like, so how I learned how to do it is because until you build this metronome in your own brain and program your brain, you have to kind of like figure out how fast the song is.